Good evening. Welcome to the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting for Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. The time is 5:30. Rachel, could you please call roll?
Yes, thank you. Joe Greer,
Present.
Dom Gelsomino,
Present.
Jennifer Bobo, Camden Hyde,
Present.
Mike Medlin,
Present.
Keith Bevan,
Present.
John Nesmith,
Present.
Mandy Roberts,
Present.
Brandon Simpson.
Present.
Thank you. Could I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
Madam President,
Commissioner Gelsomino.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Can I get a second? Okay, Commissioner Bobo seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is adopted. Next, I need an approval of the minutes for the February 9th, 2022 regular meeting.
Madam President,
Commissioner Gelsomino.
I move that we approve the minutes from the February 9th, 2022 regular meeting.
Commissioner Bobo seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. And next we have announcements, starting with Mike. That's a new start.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So April is National Volunteer Month. It's a month that's dedicated to recognizing the importance of volunteering and honoring the contributions that volunteers make by donating their time, their talents, and most of all, their passion. And this group that is you guys have all of those things, and especially passion. You show up to these meetings month after month after month and make contributions, and your work is greatly appreciated. You help us tremendously. I hope you know how much we appreciate you. So we just wanted to take a minute and give you a thank you card and a small gift. And we can't say thank you enough. Julie, this actually goes for you as well. All of those things and her talents and passion for gardening. You're going to hear from her in just a few minutes. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have announcements with Shelley Houston.
She's back. Hello, commissioners. How are you? I'm so happy to have events to put on my little schedule of upcoming activities. We went through a year or two where it was kind of slim pickings, but things are getting back to a little bit more normal-ish, we'll call it. And so you can just check this, maybe pin it to your refrigerator. But things are warming up. The Take Me Fishing trailer that the Idaho Fish and Game Department brings to our parks, they're starting to make the rounds and they're stocking our fishing ponds. The Meridian Main Street Market opens this Saturday, rain or shine. They'll probably get a little both, I'm guessing, but they're very optimistic. They've really got a good menu of vendors coming, including some produce and that sort of thing. So they're very pleased with how that's going. That'll be from 9 to 2 here at City Hall. All sorts of miscellaneous events. One thing that is relevant to us in our work is we have a new set of 10 cornhole boards. They're made of concrete, so they're permanent fixtures out in Settlers Park, and they're in the same area as the horseshoe pits. We've alternated. You'll see. It's a long story, but there are 10 new cornhole courts, and we got them through a grant from the Together Treasure Valley organization, which you apply for funds and explain how you'd like to enhance your community. And we were fortunate enough that I think it was a $9,000 or $10,000 gift. So very nice. And they're embossed with the city logo as well as the Together Treasure Valley logo. So on Friday the 13th, what could possibly go wrong? At noon, we'll be at Settlers Park, kind of over near the tennis courts by the horseshoes. And we'll have a little ribbon cutting for the new Cornhole Court. And we'll thank our folks that helped make that possible. And we'll probably even have some bean bags so we can play a little cornhole. And then we go straight into Unplug and Be Outside Week, which is May 7th through 14th. And it's going to kick off with a big kickoff celebration in Kleiner Park. And part of that activity on May 7th is going to be the Arbor Day tree planting and celebration. And it's kind of sandwiched in between a guided tour of the Arboretum, where an arborist is going to give tree care tips and help people know how to select trees for our area. And then afterwards, people can go over to the community garden if they like. And Julie Bookencamp and friends will lead a community garden tour, and there could be some seed swapping. So anyway, I emailed that to you all today. So if you can join us, that'd be great. And you could certainly bring kids or nieces or nephews or grandkids, because it's going to be fun. The other thing I want to show you is the new activity guide, the little girl swimming on the front. We recently have kind of taken over responsibility for the operation of Meridian Pool. So now we're kind of obsessed with all things pool, swimming, and water, especially in hiring lifeguards, but that's a story for another day. So this is just chock full of information, classes, camps, workshops, information about our parks and pathway system. So that's something that'll kind of be in play for the next few months. And people access it online at meridiancity.org/activity guide. So again, all sorts of activities warming up. So take a look at what sounds good. If you have questions about any of them and kind of wonder what's the dealio, you just call me and I'll give you the inside scoop, especially you new folks. Okay, any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, I think music bingo is calling. You hear that? Yeah, I heard that.
I did see that that cornhole, the boards are in the annual report. So there's a picture.
Yeah, those aren't our actual ones. Our actual ones are embossed with logos, but that's exactly.
The idea behind them.
Yep, that's it. Same company. Okay.
I saw those when I was looking through that.
Okay, so yeah, so you have to bring your own bean bags for now. We're thinking about having the concessionaire might choose to have a supply of bean bags to loan out or to rent out. We're not sure what the mechanics are, but you might as well just have your own little set of bean bags. I think you can get them at Dick's Sporting Goods, or you can order them off Amazon or Etsy. So you could be a bean bag snob and have your own little, bag of bean bags. Okay, that's enough from me. Peace out.
Thank you, Shelley. And I didn't mention, thank you, Mike. It's easy to be a volunteer for the city. And I feel I've been volunteering for a while, and I know that I feel every year you guys are really good about making people feel appreciated. So it's easy to donate time. Okay, moving on to new business. We have Communities in Motion with Carl Miller from the Community Planning Association Compass, Principal Planner.
Good evening, Madam President, and Parks and Recreation Commission. Do I need to speak into this mic? That'd be better. Great. My name is Carl Miller. I work at Community Planning Association, or Compass. We're just a couple blocks to the east, and I've been both a resident and a work in Meridian since 2006. I have 3 children, so I really appreciate the work that you guys do. We attend Meridian parks and trails quite often. I have a presentation about Communities in Motion 2050, which is the long-range transportation plan for the region for Ada and Canyon County. Looking through my notes, my PowerPoint, I realized I have way more than 20 minutes worth of material here. So I'm going to talk really fast, and I'm going to ask you to interrupt me throughout, and please feel free to ask questions, and we'll kind of go wherever you'd like to go with this presentation. So, all right, I'm already 1 minute in, so I better get stepping. So yeah, we're going to try and hit all these subjects. Who's Compass? What's a long-range transportation plan? What's Communities in Motion? What goes into that plan? Why you should care, and then how you can be involved in it. So first of all, who's Compass? Compass is the Community Planning Association. We're the association of cities, counties, highway districts, and many other stakeholders and agencies who really plan for the future of the Treasure Valley. Oh, that just happened on its own. But I think I got a runaway train here. Did I do something? Okay. basically we bring in together stakeholders to really look into the future and say, what are we going to need to do to prepare the future for the increase in traffic and growth and all the other demands that we have on the system. So as you can see, these are the different members. City of Meridian is a member. So ultimately Compass is its members. We go in the direction that our board of directors made up of our elected officials wants us to go. I think I covered that, so I'll skip ahead. But we really see ourselves as the forum for regional collaboration and helping the region to maintain economically vibrant choices in people work and play and travel. So what do? We have 4 main tasks. We plan, we implement, we provide technical expertise, and we facilitate these discussions. I'm going to focus mostly on the planning part, but feel free to ask me any questions about the others, or we'd be happy to come back at a later date to discuss those. But really our main focus, our main task is developing a long-range transportation plan. It looks at the future multimodal transportation system. So when I say multimodal, I mean every different way of moving around, whether that's in a car, a van pool, carpool, a bus, freight, walking and biking, or public transportation of any sort is really included in this plan. It's meant to look at all these modes and how we integrate these modes together so we can work together rather than separately. We look at forecasted growth and how large we think the region will be, not geographically, but how many people will be here. We've done some analysis and we believe there'll be about 1.1 million people by the year 2050. Now, after the last couple of years, I think you're probably thinking we're gonna have 1.1 million people in the next few years because of the way that we were being growing, but we do anticipate this growth will continue, and we're in for several years of growth over the next 20 years. Our plan does need to be financially constrained, though. There's a lot of things on our wish list. We know that there's bridges and roads and pathways and trails that we would like to build. We can only put in the plan what we can financially afford. And it really was developed through a lot of public involvement, which I'll get into in just a moment. But if you do any of these things on the screen, if you bike, if you take a bus, if you drive, if you have Amazon deliver bean bags to your house, this plan applies to you. Our current plan is called Communities in Motion 2040 2.0. It had a horizon year of 2040. And now we're out in the middle, well, not in the middle, we're kind of towards the end of our development of Communities in Motion 2050. So we're looking out to the year 2050. And we developed this plan over 3 main phases. We had the explore phase where we really said, what could the future look like? Now, this was 2019. We maybe didn't get it exactly right. We didn't know that there would be a pandemic upon us, but we did work with, I'll get into this in a second, but a public involvement piece where we said, what do you value about the Treasure Valley, and how can we make sure that we continue these things, and what could change? And people had all sorts of ideas, and we included that in the next phase, our choose phase, where we really had to narrow our options a little bit. Sky's the limit in the first phase, and then we have to choose. We can't have everything. We're financially constrained. We're constrained by policies. There's a lot of constraints. We'll have to choose what's most important and then prioritize. This in the phase that we're in right now, where we're ranking the different transportation projects, and we're saying we don't have the money for everything, but these are the most important things. And that's where we'll really ask for your input. So the explore phase again covered the demographic forecast. It included focus groups with growth and economic development partners, travel and tourism partners, safety partners. Then we launched our survey back in 2019, which was called A Lot Can Change in 30 Years. And then a lot changed in about 6 months from that. We had a great participation from that. We did a lot of outreach. We did every event you could think of in the Treasure Valley. There was somebody at Compass there with an iPad saying, can you take this survey? We had over 3,100 people participate in this survey to really give us an idea of what is the most important thing about the Treasure Valley to them. And how life will change by 2050. And so we were out at Boise State University football games. And one thing that we learned really quick is people didn't want to take that survey during tailgating at Boise State football games. So we kind of adjusted our approach and we reached people in other ways. But we found that people had 4 main goals about what they wanted from their government in the Treasure Valley. One was convenience. They wanted to get places easily, whether that was with a vehicle or walking and biking. They wanted safety. They wanted economic vitality. They wanted to continue to have strong jobs and a strong economy, and they wanted an overall quality of life. We have a unique quality of life in the Treasure Valley. Beautiful area. We have, it's great. And people wanted to continue that quick access to parks and the foothills and the river and all those kind of things. The second phase was the choose phase. Again, we had a public involvement process. We developed what we call our Communities in Motion 2050 vision, where we looked at where will people live and where will people work by 2050. We developed a complete network policy. You may have heard of complete streets policies. This one really looked at a complete network policy where we said, maybe every street won't be everything to everyone, but the whole system can work together so that way we can keep bikes and pedestrians safe, and we can move freight vehicles and motorized vehicles. And if we build a network rather than looking at individual streets, then we really can develop a plan that works for everybody. And in that phase, we also heard through our public survey that people really wanted high capacity transit. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Basically, maybe this is a lot to cover, so I'll just say we learned a lot from that first survey, and we developed 4 distinct scenarios where we said, this is the choose phase. You can't have everything in life, but what's most important? And we came up with 4 scenarios called Let It Be, which really is the continued trend that we're experiencing right now. Ticket to Ride, which would focus on building that light rail or commuter rail system in the valley. A Penny Lane, which really looked at affordable housing. And this was a few years ago, before affordable housing was as unaffordable as it is today. But how are we going to get more affordable housing? And not just affordable housing, but that housing plus transportation cost. If you have affordable housing, but you live really far in rural areas and you can't take transit and you're paying $4 or $5 for gas, well, it's no longer affordable. And then Come Together, which was our scenario about making our cities grow more economically consistent with infill development and not expanding our services into areas where we don't have that, preserving farmland. So we put that into our second survey that we called Where Do We Grow From Here? For this one, we had over 3,000 participants again, and this was all online. So a lot of word of mouth, and really was pleased because we didn't think anybody would participate in a survey right in the middle of COVID when we weren't sure what was going on. But what we found was that people really liked 2 scenarios, Ticket to Ride and Come Together. Both of those actually got 62% of people said that they found those favorable or strongly favorable. And then the other 2 scenarios were Let It Be and Penny Lane that people didn't like as much. So we combined those 2 scenarios that people liked and developed a Communities in Motion 2050 vision, which really highlights the growth and transportation system that we're shooting for 2050. We're developing these hard copy maps right now, but the map is also on our website, but it really outlines if we grow in a certain way and we provide transportation infrastructure, that we can really maintain the quality of life and the great things that we have in the Treasure Valley. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the active transportation side, but really this then got into the third phase, the prioritized phase, and we looked at who needs active transportation infrastructure and services, bike lanes and sidewalks and pathways. We looked at vulnerable populations. We looked at providing a lot of choices to people, how this can be a great alternative to traveling in a vehicle to reduce congestion and air pollution. And then really looked at how are we going to provide this system for us. So, and then the other recurring theme we heard throughout each of the surveys was that people really wanted a transit option, particularly to parallel the interstate, so people wouldn't have to commute in with 30,000 of their best friends every morning and back every night. This is a picture of the Salt Lake tracks, and that spurred the third survey that we did, which was called All Aboard. And that one really focused in on public transportation and a high capacity transit option in the Treasure Valley, and it really looked at, again, those trade-offs. Do people want a lot of stops where they're convenient, but it would be slower, or infrequent stops? So maybe you have to drive to a park and ride lot, but maybe a more efficient route, and a lot of these kind of trade-offs, so that we could really narrow in on the type, the mode, and also the alignment, as well as the stops that we would see in the Treasure Valley. We'll cover that for time, but Oh, there we go. So the first one from that survey, we actually had, let's see if I got my numbers right, about 11,800 people participate in that survey, which is phenomenal for us because we've had many public hearings where there's not a single person in the room other than staff. So to get 11,000 people participate in this was just phenomenal and great. And the first time we've ever had a really good chunk of the population weigh in on this issue. Based on their feedback in the survey and then the board of directors direction on this, we identified the Union Pacific Rail Corridor as the locally favored route with infrequent stops, maybe about a dozen stops between downtown Caldwell and the Boise Depot is currently what we're looking at as the high capacity option there. And then that would be, and then the north of the Boise River would be the State Street Bus Rapid Transit option. I think I talked a little bit more about, maybe I don't. Bus Rapid Transit really would be bus on a dedicated lane, so it doesn't have to mix with traffic, whereas the high capacity would be its own, again, dedicated, but along the rail corridor. Okay, so that gets us to the third phase, the prioritized phase.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gelsomino.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a quick question for you, Carl. When you're talking about that high transit, so I don't know if you've ever been to Denver, but there is the speed train from downtown Denver. It gets you to even Aurora, to Boulder, and so forth. Is that similar to what we're talking about with this particular high transit transportation method?
Yeah, so at this point we do, I hate to overcommit, we do have to do additional studies, environmental studies and funding and those kind of things. But what we're looking at right now is a dedicated train, and so not a bus. So we looked at these four in the top right corner of this picture is the four options we looked at. The top right would be the most similar to what we have. I'm sorry, I've never been to Denver. It's very similar to the Salt Lake approach, where we would have a dedicated on the transit on the rail corridor. We'd have to redo some of the infrastructure, but then stops every 2 to 4 miles. So we're currently looking at stops at Eagle Road, downtown Meridian, and then 10 Mile and Highway 16 extension. Those would be the ones within the Meridian sphere. Yeah, thanks. And please do stop me. I want to make sure I'm hitting the right subjects for you. So maybe I'm stopped right now. Maybe I'll pause and see if there's any other questions.
Madam President, I did actually have a follow-up question. There was, Carl, there was one particular slide that just kind of blitzed through, but it had a figure of 1.1 million by 2050. I remember actually in my first year on this commission that Compass and ITD came and gave their report and their prognosis, and they were looking at potentially 1.25 million people in Ada and Canyon alone by 2040. With the pandemic and the shutdowns and the lockdowns, we thought that was going to probably halt that. Instead, when everything reopened, there were more people here afterwards than there were when the lockdowns and the shutdowns started. What was your guys's reevaluation on the trend of growth and where you guys were with your prognosis 4 years ago now to today?
Yeah, great question and good memory for remembering that. So for Communities in Motion 2040, our forecast was just over 1 million people by 2040. And then our 2050 forecast is almost 1.1 million by 2050. One of the reasons we do long range forecasts is it's really difficult to be right in any one particular year. I didn't predict the pandemic. Most people didn't. And even if it happened, I think a lot of people thought people would stay, and we didn't realize, no, that made the Treasure Valley even more attractive. In fact, last year was the second most residential units that the Treasure Valley has ever permitted. Scary thought, the number one was 2005, which was right before the run up to the Great Recession. So just keep that in mind. But also we've had 3 of the 5 largest growth years in the last 3 years. So yeah, there's been a lot of growth. I think that many people are expecting that 1.1 million number to be too low. Keep in mind the 1.1, just over 1 million number was often considered too high once, when we were in the Great Recession and we weren't building anything and people thought, oh, that number is too high. Well, we kind of see the ups and downs and the cycles in the economy. So one good thing about doing that 30-year cycle or forecast is that we can be wrong on any one particular year and we'll probably still get pretty darn close. In fact, our 2020 forecast that we did 30 years ago, now that we got the census numbers in, I thought, well, let's check it out. So we checked the difference between our forecast and the actual census numbers. We were less than 0.5% off. So I didn't do that forecast. I wish I could take credit, but man, we almost nailed it. Like within that few thousand people, considering the crazy years we've had, that is pretty remarkable. So I don't know, I'll come back in 20 years to this commission and hopefully everybody's still here and we'll see if I was right or not. We do see a lot of in-migration. Sorry to get a little technical. We're also seeing a lot of the fertility rate has dropped drastically. The largest drop in fertility that we've ever seen, the 60s was even not as drastic of a decrease. So I'm trying to alert the school districts that don't overbuild because there's not the babies coming down the route. But anyway, did that answer your question? Yes. Okay.
Madam President,
Commissioner Bobo.
did you also need to account for although increased growth, of course, but the amount of people that are teleworking and not in need of the transportation as much as they were pre-pandemic?
Great question. Yeah, we've had some deep thoughts about that. One of the issues is that we run for any of our forecasts, that the demographic forecast plays into that, and we look at where people will live and we look at where people work, and it runs through what we call our travel demand model, and it really looks at, okay, how are people going to get from A to B and B to C and all those kind of things. Being that the trend, the drastic change in work from home is so recent, we don't have great data on that yet. We have just last year did a household travel survey. You may have gotten it. We hit maybe 50,000 homes, some enormous number. I got it. And basically we asked people to track where they were driving every day. And some days I'd drive into work and some days I'd work from home. And now we finally are processing and synthesizing that data to find out just how much work from home is occurring. And it's a lot. Now, how much is going to stay and how much is going to go away is a really good question that I don't know. I imagine a lot of it will stay, and it will have to adjust our travel model to, accordingly, so that way we're not over forecasting things. But we also are finding that while those peak hours are diminishing, people aren't driving in at 8 o'clock every day, they're still making a lot of trips. They're just 10:15 to Starbucks and 12 o'clock to pick up something at the dry cleaners. So there's still the same amount of trips, but the peak hours are kind of softening. Those shoulders are kind of lessening. So really good question. I wish I had a more quantitative answer for you, but I guess the answer is I'll come back in 20 years and we'll talk about that one too. So I think I've used up my 20 minutes and I apologize that I didn't get through my presentation. Would you like me to cover the last part in the next?
You can keep going.
Okay. All right. I'll try and go quickly. So high capacity transit, bus rapid transit on State Street. Again, financial plan, congestion management plan, which is looking at how do we reduce congestion through what we call travel demand management. It's not always just building wider roads. Sometimes it's work from home. Sometimes it's carpools and van pools and intelligent transportation systems and signal timing. And there's a whole long list of things that we can do. And then working on that funded and prioritized transportation project list. So we start with those Communities in Motion 2050 goals. Again, convenience, safety, economic vitality, and quality of life. And we run particular potential projects through that to identify which one will have the best return on investment. We also consider which ones are gaps in the system that we could fill, which ones support other modes of transportation, which ones would have environmental issues that we would have to consider, which ones serve low income and equity issues better. So there's a lot of things that goes into that prioritization. On the off-system network, so the paths and trails, we also look at how easily would we be able to own that property? Is it proximity to key locations, major employers or parks or other things that we need to get to? And then we do a connectivity analysis, look at how walkable is the area, and if we could fill a gap on the off-network transit system, what would be the benefit to the community? This is, and I apologize for this map, it's not the best one, but this is our draft unfunded pathway system. Like I said, we're right in the middle of getting public comment. So if you have comment on this, we'd be happy to take that. I'll give you a little bit more information at this point, but we have worked really closely with the City of Meridian, Ada County Highway District, and many others to develop this pathway map to look at how we can serve the Treasure Valley on the off network. Okay, so why should you care? How can you be involved? Well, I think you know why you should care. It's your transportation system, it's your transportation dollars, it's your quality of life. We really want to build a plan that works for you and for the residents here in Meridian. We are right now putting this Communities in Motion 2050 pieces of that out on our website at compassidaho.org. And we will be looking for feedback. You may have already participated. If it's all right, anybody remember any of those 3 surveys? Did anybody participate in any of those? Oh, great, thank you. So you're probably already on our list. You may have subscribed to our emails. We have social media. And then we're gonna have a public comment period in September for the draft plan that's gonna go out. So as we develop Communities in Motion, the next one, we really will look for your input early and often, as that's the best way to participate in this type of process. So again, we'll finish the draft, we'll adopt it by the end of this year, and then we're gonna do all the things that it takes to make this transportation plan happen. So thanks for letting me take a little extra time. I do appreciate that. And I think I have a question over here.
Pardon me. I just noticed that Commissioner Roberts had her virtual hand up.
Oh,
So she might have a question.
Yes.
Sorry, Mandy.
No, that's okay, Madam President. Thank you for calling on me. Carl, thank you for the great presentation. I'm really impressed that we are planning around activity centers. I've been working in planning over in the Puget Sound, Washington region for couple of decades now, and that is something that as they're building light rail and bus rapid transit, that they're really looking to kind of do some recentering to create places that are more walkable, bikeable to those transit stations, and that also they're maximizing, the number of people that are living and working in proximity to those. And I've often thought that, really far out planning for Boise and the Treasure Valley, we need to really look at centers beyond what we have today and how we might intensify or create neighborhood centers in some of the suburban areas that are growing really quickly, as you know, so kind of a long-term view there. I was also really happy to see the idea of using the rail corridor for commuter, we would call it like commuter rail maybe. But I do know that it's rather challenging to work in an active rail corridor where freight is being moved. And my question, I'm getting to it. My question is, have you had many conversations with rail operators yet about how that might work with introducing commuter rail?
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner, and sorry, I didn't catch your name. You're just a voice that.
Commissioner Roberts.
Oh, okay. You can't see my face. I'm sorry. Commissioner Roberts. Yeah.
Oh, Commissioner Roberts, thank you. Yes, so to kind of talk about your second point first is we are having as many conversations with Union Pacific and other freight distributors along the rail as we can. Currently, we're in a situation where it's kind of a chicken and egg. We need to demonstrate that we can fund this system so that Union Pacific will want to talk about leasing or purchasing part of the corridor. And yet we really can't have that conversation about how to fund things because we don't have a plan of how we would make it work, which we need to, have. I'm sorry, I think I cut you off.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So we actually have, we're proposing next Monday to our board of directors what's called the planning and environmental linkages, where we'll be able to really take that hire consultant and really work through a lot of these issues about funding and environmental issues and identifying ways that we can move this project forward, because I think it's been one that's we've had on the books for a while and haven't made as much progress as I think most of us would like. But in the meantime, we're also really looking at that, and you talked about this first, is that first and last mile connection. So that way, when we do finally have a financial piece that we can buy and operate this system, that people can get to it as well, and that there's safe and convenient and comfortable access for bicycles and pedestrians to get to transit stations, because there's no point of having a transit system if people can't get there, or if the only way to get there is by auto. It really changes the nature of that, and it loses a lot of that economic vitality that you can have there. And there probably is going to be a mix of park and ride lots versus ones that are kind of activity center based. But we really are trying to develop a plan based on these activity centers and how to make them serve a variety of modes. And that complete network really looking at, if we can move vehicles on this road, maybe it opens up this other avenue to be more walkable and street friendly and those kind of things. So good point, good observation about the activity centers. We're moving forward, although slowly, on that high capacity option.
Thanks. Thank you.
So I did want to mention, I have received a lot of emails from Compass about the surveys. So if you guys haven't already, if you go to the website, make sure that you're receiving the emails, because I think you sign up or at least put in your information. Yeah, if you would like to sign up to get emails from us, we do education series about transportation issues. In fact, today we had one about safety. Oh, great. Yeah, wonderful. That'll be a big focus of the next transportation bill, as well as the focus of our next long-range transportation plan. But also you'll be, the first to get these surveys. And I think the surveys were pretty interesting and fun and weren't very burdensome. And they really do help us to, direct our work towards what people want us to be doing. So we really do appreciate that. Thank you. And I feel like probably this area might be a little more challenging. I know that when I see people driving, it's one person per car, and it is a long stretch. So we have people commuting from long distances. So I would think that some of these surveys and the information is challenging to collaborate to come to a solution. It is. People will use. Yeah. Madam President, we got a lot of, this day and age, a lot of conflicting attitudes about what we should be doing. But there were a lot of similarities as well. And the one that came through in every survey was we need a high capacity option for air pollution, for convenience, for economic vitality of the different activity centers, for options when people are older and don't want to drive, or when they're too young to drive. So there's really a lot of advantages to it. There's going to be a big lift in getting funding and getting legislation. Right now, we're one of 2 states that doesn't have even the option for a local option sales tax. So it's a lot of bake sales right now until we can get that going, but we're not giving up hope just yet. And I think transit is more, dependable, right? If you carpool, you're depending on someone else, but with transit, you're depending on what time you need to be there. So that's why I think it's attractive. Thank you for your time. Anybody have any questions? No? Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you. Information. Okay, next, thank you, Julie, for waiting. We have a community garden update with Julie Bookencamp with the Meridian Co-op Gardeners. She is the president. You are back.
I always want this to be like this much longer. You know, I could do this in my sleep, but I want notes so I don't forget anything. Madam President, members of the commission, Rachel, Steve, Mike. Anyway, thank you for having me back. I enjoy this time of the year. We're getting ready to get the garden going. And I just want to thank you that you give me this opportunity to update you on what's happening with Meridian Co-op Gardeners and with the community garden in Kleiner Park, along with Pollinator Gardens, one in Kleiner Park and one you'll learn about in Heroes. So we are a unique model for community gardening, and I also feel that we're making a difference. I think we're making a big difference, and we're just that little corner, 0.37 of an acre in Kleiner Park. I learned that this year. We've always said it was under an acre, but somebody mapped it out for me, and we are 0.37 of an acre. So we're making a difference on that small little piece of land. This garden has been a unique opportunity, I think, not only for me, but for more than 125 gardeners that have been a part of this garden since 2013 when I started keeping record. And we've had our share of successes and our share of challenges. It's hard work, but we find it incredibly rewarding. And I think everybody involved would agree with that. I would like to begin rather than end with thanking all of you for supporting us. This has been a unique partnership, and the longer I've been involved with this, the more I realize how special it is. As I've tried to help other people start gardens and look at gardens across this country, this is a really unique situation. And 2012, I received a text message from Luke Kavanagh on, I think it was the 15th of March, and he received a note or a memory that popped up that said that was the date 10 years ago that he got notice that the garden was approved. So this is my 10th year, going into my 10th year from 2013 forward. We consider it to be a pretty big year. Here I am, along with some of you again. But I'm in awe of what we've accomplished together. And heading into that 10th year, I can tell you, I've downloaded more than 10,000 pictures onto Facebook of the park, of vegetables, of dirt. There's definitely more pictures of those things on my phone than there are of my family or my children. But we've accomplished a lot. Anyway, would not be, oh, sorry, I didn't have that up. Oh, back to this. Thanking you. The land is amazing. The location is perfect. The water, I can't begin to tell you the importance of having the city water that we're on. Last year, most of my friends running community gardens, their water was shut off about a month and a half early. So those long crops, the tomatoes, the winter squashes, the pumpkins, weren't allowed to fully develop. And so we feel very fortunate. The use of the heavy equipment, the supplies, so much more. I mean, it just seems sometimes I'll have a conversation with Mike and things start showing up. And so for that, I'm incredibly thankful. We just keep going with what we have, but the additional supplies help. But we couldn't do it without your support. I couldn't do it without these guys. The park employees have been absolutely incredibly helpful, and sometimes at a moment's notice. When we have irrigation problems and leaks and I've got crops on the ground, they are there and they help us out. And Wade, you just have to know the joke around the maintenance yard right now is if Wade retires, I'm probably gone too. So whatever you can do, keep him in place. He's like absolutely amazing. You know, the garden is 33 families. We added an additional family in this year. We have 33 families who commit to working on Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings for about 6 months out of the year. And it's a huge commitment. It's a hard commitment because if you like to camp on the weekends and if you like to travel for long periods of time, it's not a good fit. And so these people are willing to make that commitment. We become family, we become friends. And I think one of the things my husband pointed out is, Julie, they've become owners. And that's something that they talk about. They are really proud of this garden, and they're not just participants like so many other people in the parks are. I think the volunteers, Mike, often feel like they have some ownership. And I think that that's key to having a successful program. And they love being a part of it despite the strict rules. We have numerous partnerships. This last year, we donated over 8,000 pounds. That went to 3 food banks, actually 2 food banks, the Meridian Food Bank and Community Ministries Pantry up on the bench, along with Emmanuel Lutheran Church in downtown Boise. They have a food ministry on Tuesday night where they feed 100 people. We were able to donate quite a bit of food to them to be able to prepare various foods that they cook there. Our community is generous. You have to know that this last year, I had checks just sent to me, and they have to be sent to me because we don't keep a bank account. Checks sent to me. I was donated a 6x10 brand new, still in the box greenhouse. So I was able to replace my 6x8 with the 6x10 and donate the 6x8 to a new community garden in West Meridian, the Calvary Chapel Meridian, kind of up behind Maverick on 10 Mile and U-Stick area over by the water treatment plant. They have a small garden over there. And so I donated ours to them, and I have a newer one, which has been great. I've got a couple of people that I've gotten to know through this process who let me know how much money they have to donate if I need it, and just call if something comes up and we needed to add something. So that's been really nice. Wagner Farms has donated quite a bit of extra food. Spyglass Gardens grows for us 2 dogs and a gopher garden we partnered with this year, and they gave us about 100-foot row to plant winter squashes. So we had an additional area for planting to go above and beyond what we currently have. Lindemann Gardens, we're planting potatoes with them. He runs a community-supported agriculture, and he has property up behind the garden that we're going to do a big potato project on, about 1/4 of an acre. And so that's just something different, new and unique, and something fun to do. Labor detail in the community did 148 hours last year. This year, I've already had 15 participants working about six hours. So what is that, 90 hours so far have been worked just in the first 2 months of the season. Education, that's one of the things that we focus on. We hope that we are being mindful about teaching not only our gardeners, but the community about food, about plants, about agriculture, just about sustainability, about taking care of the land, about how you grow a garden. We are able to participate in Unplug and Be Outside this year, so we're looking forward to being able to do that. We're really excited. This year, our soil looks the best it's ever looked. I've had a lot of compliments on it. There's just a lot of organic matter. We've kind of worked through the clay that's been there since year 1. And so we feel like this year is going to be a good year for that. The group we love teaching are the children, and we were able to bring the children's program back this year. The children were given sunflower seeds at home before our initial work days, and they planted and grew sunflowers at home, and this was when they were planting them in the garden along the road. So we had a nice long row, and each one had their name on it. And through the season, they watched the sunflowers grow. Many of those sunflowers were entered into the fair for tallest, although I have to tell you, we took our 14-footer in thinking it was tall, and somebody had one that like it was really tall. So we thought but we did win largest head on one, which was pretty exciting. Anyway, so that's been a fun project. These are just pictures for you to take a look at what the children do. They watch their plants grow. They participate in special activities that we have for them at least once a month. They love and participate in everything that the adults do. So they harvest, they plant, they water, they take care of. We're making a bird feeder over on the right there. They love the flowers. They love unusual things in the garden. We had a class on building habitats, and you can see we have dinosaurs in our habitat. flowers galore. We continue to give flowers away. They are not only beautiful, but absolutely draw, I think, the attention of a lot of people. A lot of people come to the garden to take place in our flower cutting events. We had 260 flower arrangements this last year that were just given away around the community. We have 4 flower cutting classes where you come in and you receive instruction on how to put arrangements together. This year being my year 10, we've talked about having 10 of them. The little gardeners also had a flower arranging class, and they were probably more particular than the adults on the flowers that they chose and the arrangements that they put together, and gave a lot of thought to who those flower arrangements would go to. And both the young men and little girls, they just absolutely loved that activity. So I think that'll be something we'll continue to do. Pollinator garden and fruit trees in Kleiner Park continues to just be part of my heartbeat. I absolutely love this space, and I think the community does too. You know, pollinator gardens were given a lot of attention, I think back in 2008, when people realized, due to the loss of habitats and the increased use of pesticides, that we were losing native pollinators. And this is sort of like a way station or a community garden for insects to basically provide pollen and nectar for those, for their needs, and to hopefully help and reverse the decline of the pollinators. We have a number of things happening in that garden. The Friends of the Pollinator are a group of people who have signed up on my Facebook page called Friends of the Pollinator Garden, who are willing to work on any pollinator projects that I've got scheduled somewhere. And so they sign up, and some of these are people who signed up, and some of them were coordinated through Chelsea with the volunteer group that she does. We have people who clean up, we have people who plant, and we have people who just manage those areas on their own and on their own time to make sure that they're safe, that the pollution and papers and trash is picked up, and that the pathways clear. We had a Girl Scout troop that planted milkweed and also built pollinator boxes. We had an Eagle Scout whose Eagle Scout project was not allowed to happen where it was happening, and he had 18 bird houses that they decided they didn't want, and they wanted to know if we wanted them. And so with permission, we put 8 bird houses in trees behind the maintenance yard building. So they're not out in the park. Nobody can really tell they're there. But one, it restored faith, I think, in humanity for this young man who had built these 18 boxes. And the 10 that he didn't put up, he sold and gave us $145 from the sale. And so that he wanted to go toward the purchase of additional plants, which have already been purchased, and most of them placed over at Heroes Park. We feel like we're making a difference. We feel like these small way stations, whether there's one in Heroes Park, whether there's one over in Kleiner Park. I know we've got a small area dedicated down in Discovery Park. I think that we're seeing the bees. We're not so worried about the honeybees, but the native pollinators, the birds, the butterflies, seeing very few butterflies right now. And that seems to be a concern in the pollinator world. Let's talk about manicured lawns for a minute, since I have your attention. They tend to be the largest manicured crop in the United States. And it seems like they're a symbol of prosperity and patriotism and order. And everybody likes these absolutely perfect manicured lawns. But what we're doing is we're losing a lot of habitat as we're knocking down these fields and building all these houses and having perfectly manicured lawns with herbicides and pesticides. And so it's going to take generations, I think, before Americans are ready to let their lawns go, and before HOAs are going to be a little more lenient on how we plant, especially the front yards of our properties. But I think we can do it by planting these little parks. And I think we can do that. So let me tell you about Heroes Park. It's in my neighborhood. It's about a block away. For 8 years, I've walked that park. walk that circle. And the list on the right are the people who participated with this project and made it possible to do what we did. 7 adults and 3 children. We did this together. Anyway, this is what I walked by year after year after year after year. It was this long length of what looked like flower beds. That's the entire length of the west side of that park. And so I called Mike and I said, do you care if I plant anything out there? And he wanted to know what. And I said, well, I have this idea. And at the time, the Ada County, the Soil and Water Conservation District was doing their pollinator packs that were being put together out at Peaceful Belly. And the city was given 2 of those. And the city donated some additional plants. And we were able to, and Mountain View High School also donated quite a few, but we were able to plant a section of that park. And it was absolutely beautiful. And those were the people that participated in planting. We did 400 plants in under 2 hours. And we had a master gardener who does floral stuff. So she was able to help us kind of with placement. But I've been out there so many times that people playing soccer have just complimented that project. And then I've been out there just working on my own and people walking by. And so the project still has a long way to go because it's a really long piece of property, but we hope to duplicate what we did last year again. And I've got more people growing for us. And then just the other day, I was able to dig out a number of transplants from Kleiner Park. It works really well. And then I could just transplant and take things over. So we made that area a little bit prettier. The Western Idaho Fair, we won. I have to tell you, those are our vegetables being looked at right there and getting ready for entry. We won 43 ribbons in the agricultural division and 29 ribbons in the horticultural division. We won over $400, which is amazing. We won 3 of Reggie's Best of the Best. So that was like an honor. I have to tell you the story about this particular flower. It won Best of Division. That's about a $45 win. Just so you know, winning that, like not only do you get a really pretty ribbon, but $45. I mean, that's like amazing. And so we do that for a couple of reasons. It brings us together as community in our group, but it also is an opportunity to make some money because we operate on like a shoestring of a budget. It costs those families $35 for the season to be involved, and they go home with more than $35 just in weather. What's new? Well, we have turned Zone 1 and Zone 5, which are the 2 ends of that garden, into full no-till zones. Before, only half of Zone 5 was no-till. So we now, we won't have a tractor in those areas. The rows are lined out with wood chips. We have covered with compost, covered with leaves over the winter time, really making the soil and everything, I feel, so much healthier. And it retains water a little bit better, especially as we're looking at possible droughts in the future. I just think the soil health is the main thing for me, is I wanted to make a difference out there for that. And so we're giving that a try. The dahlias, as you saw, the one that we won on, the dahlias were an addition. They're expensive. Those tubers run about $5 to $30 a piece. Somebody donated 25 to us and somebody else donated another 25. We had about 60 in the garden because I purchased a few more. They're addictive. If you go onto any of the dahlia Facebook pages, these people are crazy, absolutely crazy. And I don't know how they do it. We're going to add 20 more in this year. There should be 80. We have compliments continually, people who make trips out to the garden weekly to watch what's happening with the dahlias. They're all labeled. They have names. I know all of their names. We're adding about 15 new names this year. They're like children, but the flowers are absolutely stunning. They're one of the longest lasting in flower arrangements. So we were excited to do that. The free little library, we built this. The more I looked at little libraries, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have one? And with the talent of my husband and a good friend, we built this little library that not only dispenses your latest novel or children's book, but it has a plastic container in there filled with seeds. so people can come and look through there. I've probably given away in the last 2 months, probably 600 packages of seeds just out of that little library. The artwork, that was another donation to us. The same woman that painted the irrigation box painted the little library. And I think there are 32 little pollinators hiding around on that box. So if you go out there, you can count them. You can kind of see a bee in the one area. Domini Farm Animal Sanctuary is on the corner of Cloverdale and Cuna Road. And she has a little farm sanctuary out there. That's absolutely amazing. And so between the two, the Gopher Farm and ours, we donated truckloads if we had old food, you know, just zucchini that got too big or something that would happen, something half rotten, we were able to take that. And then some of us were just too overly ambitious, and we collected pumpkins from 3 neighborhoods and literally took all of those pumpkins and about 4 truckloads out there to help her feed her animals. So she's got a great place out there. What else? This is kind of toward the end. I'm still involved with Treasure Valley Community Garden Co-op. That's the group of us that we're trying to connect all the community gardens in this area together to share resources, to share ideas, to kind of be cheerleaders for one another, because this is hard, hot work, guys. And I think everybody's anticipating 2022 to be worse than last year. And it was hard, and it was tough. It's a great group. It's kind of hard because we're busy to stay connected, but we do a pretty good job of it. And we try to help people find community gardens to be a part of. Canyon Springs Outreach Garden Co-op is in Middleton. I spoke with them during COVID about co-oping their garden and not just being a church garden where 3 people were trying to make it work. Last year, they added in 3 families, a total of 17 people. Ended the season, I think 1 family left, so they had 10 people involved, including kids. They were doing the same thing this year, hoping to expand that to just make that more sustainable for them, more workable for them, letting them share the food and the work with the people. At the same time, there's still plenty of food left over for the food banks. Powerline Farm Co-op was a woman that was a part of our garden, and she has a homestead out on Powerline. And I went and met with her and the person that was going to be running that garden for her, and gave them all of our information and our calendars, and they basically have duplicated that and are doing a farm co-op on her property. And they've got about 8 or 10 families involved. I think right now it's maybe kind of homeschooling families and church group, but they've got room for additional people. The Nampa Grange got a hold of me, and they were looking for land. And so they're trying to find land to have some kind of community garden on. And so I've been in contact with them. And then I met with a young mother. Crimson Point Community Garden is next to Crimson Point Elementary in Cuna. And it was a community garden that was taken down by the city in 2020 because they were down to 1 park employee. And it wasn't well managed or taken care of the way it should have been. So it basically was dismantled, although there's still water there. This young mother has a lot of oomph, and she's going for it, and she's been in conversation with the city to move forward. The city really wants hands off. They don't want to do any more than they're going to have to do, but I've just been trying to be her cheerleader to kind of get it going, to show the city what can be done. So that's pretty much all I've got for you. Our goals this year are really, you know, I love new things like libraries and pollinator gardens and all of that. I love it. It keeps me going. But this year we've decided to focus on doing what we do and doing it better. And so one of the things we focused on this last year, and I think maybe even the year before, was having the food that we deliver to food banks look good. And that sounds weird, but it's one thing to just like pull a bunch of stuff out, put it in a thing, and you take it and deliver it. But, you know, we're trimming things up, and we're washing certain things, and we're labeling peppers so they know exactly what kind of peppers they're getting. And who needs all these hot peppers? If you don't know what they are, it's kind of hard to know. So we just want to do what we're doing, but do it better. And that's kind of our goal for this year. So no big fireworks, but I think it'll be a great season. We have great people involved this year. We did add in 6 new families. So I had 6 leave, well, 5 leave, and then we added in. That's what's happening in our neck of the woods. You guys take really good care of us, and I appreciate that so much. The garden looks good. We've got half of it planted, and then we'll be waiting until about May 15th or later to put all the summer. Yeah. Any questions?
I would say that while you say there aren't big fireworks, your garden is a big firework. And because you're, like you said, it's a small piece of property, but it's the quantity, not the quantity, it's the quality, right, of what you can put in to what you're doing. And you started off with thanking everyone. And I think that it's a mutual thankfulness from, I know at least from everyone in here. What you're doing is incredible, and you're able to spread that throughout the valley, which is something I know you had spoken about before. So it sounds like it's actually
It's key.
Getting
I
some
stopped in the
ground.
Garden today, which was a lot of fun. It's a little Episcopal church that's on Cole Road,
Mhm.
kind of across from the old St. Mark's, I think. And a friend of mine is trying to revive that garden. And I stopped there today just thinking I would take a picture for her. She lives quite a distance from the garden. And it was overrun with high school kids, absolutely everywhere, digging and doing tarps and doing cardboard and doing compost. And one stone is a high school in downtown Boise, and it's sort of a student-led school. And it was Be the Good Day, or Do the Good Day, I think is what it was called, today and tomorrow. And she has them involved in this project. And it was just so exciting to see all these 14, 15, 16-year-old students just so into getting dirty, digging in the dirt. Yeah. Crazy.
Well, and that kind of leads into how you have the children involved. I grew up on a farm, so having things planted and watching them grow was part of life. But being in a city, a lot of kids don't get that opportunity. So I think that that's incredible for them. I did have a question. So how is the weather affecting you right now? Your plantings? Okay.
You know, we want it, since we have these no-till areas now, it allows us to get in the garden sooner. And we've never really been very successful with some of the cold crops. Broccoli, okay, cauliflower, no, just things bolt a little too quickly. And so it's like, we didn't get them in the garden. And then all of a sudden I'm putting up row cover, and then next thing you know, it's snowing, and then the row cover's falling down. So, you know, it has its challenges, but the bigger challenge this year was a rabbit came in and chewed down an entire row of broccoli. It's like you got to start all over because they don't. So that was, you know, and we think it was wild and it hasn't come back. We've set traps. Traps are set out there. You know, 2 years ago, somebody dumped 4 domestic rabbits out there. White ones, black ones. I mean, we could just walk up to them, pick them up, but they were like down.
Oh my,
And that's hard. Like when you spend
it's devastating.
months
Yeah.
growing these plants to put into the garden and then they're just gone.
It makes the bunnies not so cute.
Makes them kinda
Oh
chubby.
my word. And then with those flower arrangements, where do you guys get the vases? Do they have to bring
So
their own?
we have just donations galore. If we're low on vases, I'll just put a note out like on next week. And then just ask our friends and family. We're overrun mostly with them now, but we usually have donations.
Oh, okay. So people they don't bring their own. That was what I was wondering.
Saying that they had vases for me upstairs, so.
Well, hopefully we have some new commissioners that I don't know if they were aware of some of the things that you're doing. And I have a note down to maybe talk to Steve, because one year we did a tour of your garden where we came out and
Yes.
you showed us what was going on. So hopefully maybe we can get that on the calendar this year.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll be there for Unplug and Be Outside too, so.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that'll be an event. that'll be
And what you're doing at Heroes Park, there are a lot of, I know, subdivisions. I lived in one where, you know, they kind of stopped taking care of some of the beds where they become bare. What a great opportunity.
Now, the biggest challenge that we're finding, and I think it's one thing that scares people away, it's sort of like who's going to run the project.
Sure.
And when you talk to them about that, all of a sudden, everybody kind of backs up because they don't know. And, you know, there has to be a commitment. I mean, I'm not sure every year I say, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Like I say, if Wade quits, I'd be filling 2 positions at that point.
We need to chain him to the building.
No, but, and he didn't ask me to say that. I'm just letting you know. He and I, we've got a great working relationship. He's the first person that's been over the park that's wanted to be involved enough to be brave enough to be on our Facebook page, you know, to see like what the needs are and to contribute to that. He and I text each other sometimes 6:30 in the morning, like we've got something going on and, you know, we know that it needs to get done. As far as that other guy, 2050, not sure 2040, that could be iffy, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was nice of him to say. Does anyone have anything for Julie?
After you.
Mr. Hyde.
I just want you to know that if you ever need a bunch of high school hands, I can rally a bunch for you. So let me know if you ever need a lot of help. I could get as many as you need.
Hey, Camden, thank you. When we need the most help is usually at the end of the year when we're cleaning out.
Okay, let me
It's
know and
usually
I
a big
can.
one, so perfect. I'll keep that in mind. Thank
Okay.
you.
Madam President,
Commissioner Gelsomino.
Julie, your annual reports are one of the main things, if not one of the only things in the entire year that restore my faith in humanity. It's just, you know, I echo all our sentiments, just absolutely phenomenal. The dahlia that won that $45 winner, that, I mean, at first glance, I thought that was like the most beautiful sea urchin I've ever seen. It was just phenomenal. Like the colors, you know, I'm at a loss for words. You guys are wonderful.
Yeah, come out and see the dahlias. They really, truly are amazing. And we may turn Saturdays into just a regular flower cutting event. You know, usually it costs people, I don't know if it's $12 to $20 per container when they go out to these flower farms. So we're a really good deal because it's free. People really like that. You know, I had a church get a hold of me. They had a big women's event and no money to spend on decorating.
Oh.
And they came out and put together, I couldn't tell you how many vases. You know, we just love sharing them and it was fun to win. So Akita is the name of that dahlia that won. I don't like Akita, but the lady that works with us, she loves Akita. It's her school colors, I guess, evidently red and white. And that one actually, we had Akita at the garden and I only brought one home, but I needed 3 in that collection. And I had some growing in my backyard. So with a flashlight late that night before the fair, I was out there and 2 of those and I thought, you're not going to win. And lo and behold, I mean, won best show.
The one you don't like.
Right.
So, and if you need dahlias, get a hold of me. So let me talk to you really quick about that. Those dahlias, there's like a whole learning curve and that's been fun for me. It's kind of like a new activity. We had to stake them differently than we do anything else. We had to care for them, but then you have to dig them up because we live in zone 6. So they get dug up and then you have to store them. Well, if you've got 60 dahlias, and the best way to store them is to cut them apart into individual tubers, making sure you get their neck and an eye, it'll come back. Then you wrap each one in saran wrap. I had hundreds of these because one tuber produces a whole octopus of tubers. And then you have to wake them up, which is what I'm doing now. So if any of you are brave enough to grow dahlias, get a hold of me and come pick some out at the house.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Okay.
Madam President, I just had a quick follow-up question. Julie, I don't know if, as far as the structure of the co-op garden on the legal financial aspect, but some of those arrangements that I saw in the photos, I mean, any florist in the valley would charge up the nose
We know.
for one of those. Are they able to be used as a fundraising mechanism for the co-op garden in the sense of those could serve as what are they called? The sort of raffles that, I mean, some of those particular arrangements would be raffled off for a good amount.
I'll have to share that with my flower. You know, we operate, like I say, on this really small budget with really not a huge need for more money. It's pretty minimal. And like I say, we operate on this like, you know, little money in, little money out, and, you know, we keep our money in a cash box, and we don't have a bank account because they want to charge me money. And every penny is kept track of, and we've got, you know, we don't want to tie into taxes. I mean, that's just a really simple little arrangement for us that we really like. I love giving things away, you know, and I love people that give things to us. You know, like I say, we, you know, when all of a sudden a $500 check shows up in the mail, that's pretty. You know, when a load of rocks gets delivered. This week, last week alone, I had a load of rocks, I had compost, I had gypsum, and I had a new valve box. Let me tell you about this valve box, guys. I told Mike that the flowers at Heroes Park look better than the ones in Kleiner Park because Heroes has a drip. We've got overhead watering over there that was connected not only to our garden, but clear around the garden. So it was watering trees. And that's all I said to Mike is I said, the flowers over there look better. Next thing I know, Dan calls and says, I just installed a valve box for you and disconnected this and like that. And I didn't ask for it. I got it. Yeah.
Nice work,
So
big part.
it's those things, you know, but we just like it simple. Yeah. Appreciate that. It's a compliment. There you go. You know, who was it that got a hold of me? It wasn't you, it was Jeanette. Jeanette got a hold of me and she wants to come pick flowers that she can give away at the Senior Citizen Center. So she wants to be able to do that this year. And we go way back with flowers. So
It's incredible.
thank you
So appreciated.
so much.
Thank you. Julie, you even got me excited about a valve box. Like there's some matches. That's
Time for some
awesome.
DIY.
Exactly. Okay. Next on our new business, we have the Pathways Tour Route discussion with Kim Warren, our Meridian Parks and Recreation Pathways Project Manager. That is a mouthful. You're a PPM.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, commissioners. That is a hard act to follow. And I echo your sentiments exactly. It just feels healthy and full of hope. Anyway, Pathways, it's that time of year again. I'm going to go back. So in lieu of a sit-down meeting next month, it's our annual Pathways tour. We do that on bikes. I think we're doing it a month later.
We are.
Our kind president pointed out, maybe on account of a lot of our staff being gone, but that's good news because we will have more daylight. Sometimes we kind of run up against the sunset. So, and I had a really great thing happen. I was thinking about this tour and it was historically, it could be tough. Like, where are we going to go? And we would go for a mile and then we'd have to get in a van and, you know, move the bikes and then we'd find another stretch of pathway. And it just wasn't very contiguous. It's a very young system. And last year I was really excited because I was worried that the route was too long. It was like 9 miles. And, you know, can we do this? So this year I was out in Northwest Meridian. And so out in the Green Circle area, by Owyhee High School, part of my job is to commission or to condition pathways when developers apply, they submit a development application. And if it overlaps with our pathways master plan, we say, sure, as a condition of development, you have to build this pathway and that pathway. And I like doing that just because it feels like it makes the developments, you know, more valuable. It increases quality of life. And it's really fun to see them grow. So I went out near Owyhee High School and And even though I recalled conditioning those pathways, there were a lot of them built. I mean, it felt like Christmas for pathways. And I came back and so anyway, you can see in the blue square, that was where we went last year on our record-long pathway tour. It was on the 5 Mile Creek pathway, which is it is our major pathway. And then you can kind of see a gap in between the blue rectangle and the green oval. We have a project there, and in partnership with a developer, we're going to finally close the gap across that mile. So, and I'm not sure exactly when, but it has been a project that has been just out there to now. Subdivisions are being built. We've got a plan to cross the road, and things are happening. And we're planning to make that connection within the next year or two. So that's exciting. And once we do, you can see just how much of the city that 5 Mile pathway will cover. So I think this will be a good tour. This is a very loose diagram of just where I think we should go. And I'm open to comments and suggestions. It does, I guess the caveat is it's long, but it involves some backtracking. I like a loop, but that isn't always possible yet. So the plan would be to start at Owyhee High School. That's the new one out at Ustick, and I think it's Owyhee Storm Avenue. And there's parking there, so that suits are gathering there. So head south and then towards State Highway 16, if you can see it there. In part to see where that alignment will come through, because we have some plans to go under that with pathways. So we would turn around, head back north, we'd cross the 5 Mile Creek. And I will point out that the yellow highlighted pathway is the 5 Mile Creek pathway. And it's very faint, but the kind of light purplish pink colored highlight is part of our Meridian loop. So we have an overall kind of framework for pathways. One of them is a big circle that goes around the city, and the 5 Mile pathway kind of slashes across that. And this is a place where both of them are coming together. So we'd head north from the high school, cross 5 Mile Creek, and head up to McMillan. That little sort of bridge jump over there is the one place along the route where we don't have any sidewalk. It was a holdout from development. So it's just one lot. We'll probably give it a scout out for goat heads before we go. But otherwise we are on 10-foot wide multi-use pathway. So anyway, we will head down to the Oaks subdivision from McMillan. That's a whole mile's worth of pathway along 5 Mile Creek. When we get to Black Cat Road, we will turn around and go back, and then we'll head north. There's a new roundabout at McMillan and a Rustic Oak Way that also surprised me when I was out there. So that'll be relatively easy crossing. And then we will head north up to Gondola Drive and through the Jump Creek subdivision. There's some nice new pathway. And then we have some choices. When I looked at mileage, and again, we're just getting some contiguous options. If we stop at Black Cat Road, that's an 8-mile ride round trip, or we could choose to go on at the 9.5 mile roughly mark at the very end. That overlaps with the pathway we did a couple of years ago. So it's wonderful to see this go a bit further west. So that's the idea. We can also, I think we'll have plenty of park staff. So if some people wanted to turn around at 8 and some wanted to go further, but I think we found last year that 9 miles was a really good ride. It felt, not too strenuous, some good time. Along the way, there'll be lots of points for discussion. So we stop and kind of take turns talking about future projects and how we're going to handle crossings under State Highway 16, or how pathways get built, new things along the way. So that is the basic route. Does anyone have anything to add or comment on? Does that seem like plan-wise that would?
Does everyone have
for
a
us?
sickle? Do you guys have bicycles?
Oh, I'll just get on to my next slide. So in preparation for the tour, do check your bike if you have one. I know one year I even dropped mine off at the bike shop the morning of the tour and it was ready. I mean, we wouldn't count on it, I would ask, but it was ready for the afternoon tour. So give a little plug for local businesses. But if you don't have a bike, we can find one for you to borrow. We have some on hand. So let us know as soon as possible. Rachel will send out, she's always wonderful about coordinating details and logistics. So she'll send out a reminder and kind of, and a request, please confirm and let us know. Often we do have a support vehicle accompany us. It's not really the Tour de France, but same idea. Just to carry basic supplies, or if somebody for some reason would need to leave, we provide water. I know that our director, who is absent tonight, but Steve did a really impressive quick change on an inner tube repair. Was that for Commissioner Bobo last year?
Record time.
No promises, but that, that could happen too if anybody is in a pinch. So that would be the plan, to meet at Owyhee High School at 5:30, which is our regular time, and go from there. And we'll have a little bit of extra daylight, and it really is a good way to, I know I try to get out on the pathways, I look at the map so much, but the places where I've actually walked or run, they're just in my head, and it's so much easier to get a sense of what's really happening and how things connect. So I look forward to sharing. And I hope that most of you who don't have more exciting plans can make it. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tease. Never mind.
That's pretty good.
Okay. That's all I have, unless you have questions or
And
comments.
hopefully we don't have snow.
Gosh, it is a very good thing that we didn't do it tonight.
I
isn't
know
it?
but we've been very fortunate. The weather usually for that particular day has always warmed up.
We generally are.
Mhm.
So yes,
It'll
be
the sun will shine for us.
all right.
Does anybody have any questions for Kim? No? I think that the route looks great, so I'm really excited to see. all of
Thank
it.
you.
I don't know if I can make that one for my house. I gotta see how far that is from my house.
Oh yeah,
Estuary Road from my house, so yeah, we'll see.
I did like that, Madam President and Commissioners, that a couple of commissioners actually rode from their house to the starting point for last year's pathway. And I also, there's a lot happening in South Meridian near Discovery Park. So I've already kind of got South Meridian on the radar for a possible tour next year, as I think there might be enough to go on, so to speak. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. Okay, we have no old business and no workshops. So next we have staff reports, which we have Mike.
And Kim might have just given her staff report, but so Discovery Park is going right now. We broke ground. It's going big time. There's probably 20 big pieces of equipment out there that are doing mass grading. We're putting sewer lines in. We're going underneath the gas lines that the sewer lines are 18 feet deep. So there's a lot of stuff, like big equipment going. And the Lakeview Golf Course irrigation and cart paths are, the contract's been awarded, and that's going to start in June, looks like. So that's pretty exciting. We got a couple of playgrounds that are contracted right now, pending lead time on the playgrounds themselves. I think you saw the one at Chateau and Bear Creek. So those are on track this summer. Those are kind of the big ones, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have.
Anybody have any questions, Mike? Yeah, go ahead.
Madam President,
Oh, yes, Commissioner Bobo.
Mike, do you know when approximately the phase 2 will be completed?
Yeah, so we'll be constructing all of 22, and it'll look mostly complete in 23, but because of the amount of grass seed and the establishment time. It'll be like the final grass seed will be the fall of 23. So it won't open until the spring of 24. If we could go in with a bunch of sod and, sod it and wait a week, mow it, and then, kind of like opening up a building where you just lay the carpet and tile and then you can let people on it. We would open in the fall of 23, but that's not going to be the case.
What about pieces of it like the pump track that don't need grass?
Well, the pump track's going to have grass, like unmown grass on the sides of the dirt piles for stabilization. So even that, and the bike park, it will break ground next spring. And along with the skate park. So yeah, even that, it's all kind of, I know in phase 1, we opened up a couple of softball fields, and I think right now I'm in the mode of under promising and maybe over delivering. So.
Which is kind of how it is right now, right?
Yeah, and things are, contractor availability, and things are taking longer than they should. And, even though we're not really being affected by long lead times, it's just that everybody is, like even the landscapers they're running at about half their staff that they would like to have. And so what that does is it translates into, with something that would take 2 months, it's going to take 4. You just don't have the manpower person power to do it. So.
Right.
We're on it though. It's exciting. There's a lot going on, and you can kind of see when you walk out there, you can go, oh yeah, that's the road in and the parking lot. And so it's,
I asked because I'm just super excited to see.
yeah.
So if you see footprints, we know who's been on.
Yeah. And I got a feeling our parks tour this fall will be at Discovery Park.
Oh, good. I was wondering if maybe some of the places, even the other playgrounds, I don't know if those would be too far.
Yeah, should be, the parking lot should be paved before the weather sets in. So September, October. So you get a good feel for the layout and, how it's going to look, and we can look at plans and then compare them to what's on the ground and go, oh yeah, I get it. That's cool. That's going to be, that's over here and over. Yeah. And if you want to go out there and just look around, we put colored project boards on the fence. So you can kind of, it's like a "you are here" kind of thing. And then you can look out.
Play at the park.
Yeah. So try to just generate a little excitement about what's going on.
That's a great thing to have out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we haven't had one phone call of, hey, what are you doing out there? Because the project boards are on the fence.
Idea behind
That's
when you have a neighborhood meeting, if your letter explains it, you don't have to push it. Okay, well, that's awesome. I'm excited to see that. So I guess, Kim, did you want to give a staff report?
Thanks, Madam President, Commissioners. I do have a few updates, although I will try not to go on too long, as you heard from me. As you know, we have several pathway infill projects that have been going on, connecting gaps. We did put the Creason connection out to bid. That one is north of 8th Street Park, connecting into the 5-mile pathway. And we got 3 bidders. The winning bid was about half the price of the engineer's construction estimate, which I have to say surprised me. We gave a pretty big bid window, but that was exciting. So that one is underway, should start this month. We've just got contracts and kind of the final I's dotted and T's crossed. Linder sidewalks, there's one at Linder and Ustick, one stretch, and then there's another one that's a little bit north and on the east side of Linder. Those plans are complete. All the bid ready documentation has been filled out. So that's just poised to go any day. We're waiting for final plans from ACHD, but don't think there'll be any changes. So, and the Locust Grove segments are also very close. And then I guess just one point of interest, we talk about growth, and I know that sometimes it's frustrating. But as I mentioned with the pathways to the northwest, I mean, one thing that really seems like an antidote to some of the frustrations to me is just that we do build a lot of pathways because of that. And one other thing that's happened for me is in the past week, I've gotten 2 calls from residents in different parts of the city saying, we need a connection here. When is this pathway going to be built? And it's been kind of fun to say those are on our plan, you know, but the problem in both cases, or the challenge, is that we don't have permission, either from private landowners in one case or from an irrigation district that we don't typically work with in another. So, but they're saying, how can we help? What can we do? And that's been kind of fun. I think maybe there's enough momentum, and one of them was near Lavender Heights, where I said so many pathways are planned. So I think the more it gets going, the more people are thinking, well, how do we tie in? And some of the areas are older and they're trickier connections to make, but those have been fun calls, and they just kind of came out of the blue this week. I just thought I'd pass that on. It's kind of exciting.
And it validates the cause, right? As you're
So
doing
much.
all these pathways to have the community be involved. That's
Well,
amazing.
And I do think that in terms of getting permission easements, that the power of neighbors to sort of work together and persuade each other might go a lot longer than we could if we were trying to ask people individually for permission. So it's still kind of a long shot to get easements across multiple properties, but it's,
They feel like it's their choice, then
yeah, I think if there's a little more ownership and excitement, then, you know, it's more likely that we could get a little further. So
great.
that's been kind of fun. And that's all for tonight, unless you have questions.
That's a lot, but that's all. Does anybody have any questions for Kim? Yes.
I got a quick question for you, Kim. I know they're fixing the Locust Grove. I don't know how that's all going, but do you have any updates on going up Locust Grove north across 2026, and whether or not there's any connections to the green belt or kind of the status? We haven't visited that for a while. I was just curious.
Madam President,
I know
Commissioner.
it's not in your purview, but I just didn't know if there was a connection there yet.
Other than a route, there've been improvements to Chinden. So we're working on that 10-foot connection north on both Locust Grove and Linder. So it's possible to cross and kind of weave your way down. But no, I think with Linder Road, Mike, you could speak to that. I think Linder Road, we've got a little bit more in terms of a pedestrian facility.
So-
Please interject if you'd like.
So the one, I think, John, the one that you're talking about is Locust Grove Road turns into Colchester. And then it drops down and you go down towards Banbury Golf Course, and you can get on the green belt that's on the south channel. And it's not very developed down there, but we talked to Eagle several years ago, and there isn't any plans to do a multi-use path on Colchester, but it's a relatively low volume street that has sidewalks. So if you were, not a young kid, you could use the on-street connection to get to the green belt. You know, if you're riding with younger kids, you could use the sidewalk. But right now, I mean, that's out of Meridian. It's in Eagle. They have no plans to make any improvements. And then as far as Linder goes, we are widening a 10-foot wide multi-use pathway to Chinden and beyond. And then when Linder Road widens, there's actually plans for a multi-use path on the west side, or actually both sides. There'll be an undercrossing at the north channel. We're trying to work with ACHD to do an undercrossing on the south channel as well. So elevate the roadway, because then part of that pathway would come from down Duck Alley area from Margaret Aldape Park. And then, so you could connect Margaret Aldape Park along the river over to Eagle Island State Park, and then you're on the Greenbelt and you can go to Lucky Peak. So last, the good thing is it's all kind of planned out. The bad thing is it's got to come with a lot of houses. Yeah, natural figures, right? But yeah. So yeah, as far as that Locust Grove, yeah, we got to get on Eagle and have them make some improvements on their
That'd be nice.
stripe a bike lane at least. But I think there's on-street parking, so might be a tough sell.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? I don't think we have for staff report. So I think that's it this evening.
Madam President,
Commissioner Gelsomino.
I'd like to make a motion for tonight's, to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
Commissioner Bobo seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned, and please remember that our next meeting is the Pathways Tour, so we'll have more information emailed on where, as Kim told us where to meet.